Okay, good morning. So nice to see all of you. This morning's shir is sponsored anonymously for the speedy recovery of Harav Avram Yitzchak ben Rachel Leah, our own Rabbi Avi Berman, by those who love him most. Rabbi Berman underwent surgery this week. We wish him a refuah shlema. This morning I'd like to explore together with you the mitzvah of Bedikat Chametz, searching the home for Chamez, for leaven, or La'arba'asar on the night of the 14th, the night before Pesach, although this year we'll be doing it 2 nights before Pesach. But if you really think about it, the mitzvah of Bedikat Chametz is somewhat counterintuitive. Why? We spend days and weeks prior to Pesach cleaning and scrubbing, ridding the home of all grit and grime, ridding the home of any and all chametz. And then the night before Pesach, or this year 2 nights before Pesach, we check the home, we perform this Badika, we perform this ceremony, this tekes, but we know there's no chametz left because we've already spent the last days and weeks working so hard to make sure that there's no chametz left. So what exactly are we accomplishing with Bedikat Chametz? Why did our Chazal institute Bedikat Chametz? Moreover, whatever we do not find, we nullify, we make the bitul. Right? We have this verbal declaration where we declare any and all Chametz to be like the dust of the earth. We zap it out of existence. We declare it hefker. We make it ownerless. So why do we need to check and go through this whole procedure if we're only going to nullify the chametz anyway? It's no longer ours. We're not going to be over or responsible. We're not going to be in violation of the prohibition of owning it if it's no longer in existence, if we make this bittul. So what are we accomplishing? What's the purpose of this bedikat chametz? And finally, what's with this custom to spread out 10 pieces of bread around the house? If you think about it, that too is counterintuitive, maybe even crazy, right? After we spent so much time cleaning the home, now we're going to take 10 pieces of bread and scatter them around the house. Number one, it's dangerous. What if one goes missing? What if you don't find one? So maybe now you have to turn the whole house upside down and search the whole house again. 2, is it some sort of game, some sort of treasure hunt? What, I'm hunting for pieces of bread that I've scattered around the house, but I know where they are, right? Okay, so some say maybe have someone else in the family place them and then you go and look for them. But I mean, what is it? Some sort of treasure hunt, some sort of game, or a scavenger hunt, like my kids like to play? And 3, it would seem that the whole practice or minhag of spreading pieces of bread around and searching for those pieces of bread, it would seem to undermine the whole institution of Bedikat Chametz. In other words, if the purpose is to do a real and sincere search of the home, but I've spread out pieces of bread, and if I only search for those pieces of bread that I've spread out, so then I'm not searching the rest of the house. Right? Chazal wanted you to search your home, and instead you're searching for those 10 pieces of bread. So it would seem that this practice would undermine the whole concept of Bedikat Chametz. So what are we accomplishing with Bedikat Chametz, and why did our Chazal institute Bedikat Chametz? That's what we'll be exploring together this morning. Here I'll put up on the screen some sources that we'll take a look at together. It's actually a fundamental machloket. It's a machloket between Rashi and Tosfos as to why exactly Chazal instituted Bedikat Chametz. Okay, so here I hope you can all see the sources on your screens. According to Rashi, here in source number 1, right at the beginning of the Masechet, his comments to the Mishnah there, Rashi explains the reason behind Bedikat Chametz, shelo ya'avor alav bival yira'eh ubival yematzeh, so that you not come to violate the Torah prohibition of having chametz seen upon you or found on you, the isur of owning chametz. Mina Torah, in addition to the prohibition of eating chametz, as you all know, one may not own chametz. Chametz cannot be in their possession, right? So the Torah in a number of places tells us that you can't own Chamez. The Torah here says what in Shmot Yud Bet. The Torah says Shivat Yamim Matzot Tochelu, right? So you're not allowed to eat Chametz. Kol Ochel Chametz v'nichrata nefesh hahi miYisrael. As we know, there's an Isur Achila, which is punishable by karet, by spiritual excision. But then there's, in addition to that, there's an Isur to own any Chametz, right? We have a pasuk in Shmot Yud Gimel, pasuk Zion, where it says, "V'lo yera'eh lecha chametz, v'lo yera'eh lecha saor b'chol gvulecha." Right? Chametz and saor, leaven, starter dough, shall not be seen upon you in all of your boundaries. V'ne'emar, it also the pasuk in Shmot Yud Bet, it says, "Shivat yamim lo yimatzeh saor bevateichem." It's not allowed to be found on you, not allowed to be seen on you, not allowed to be found on you, right? All sorts of leaven and chametz, etc. So that is the isur of bal yira'eh, bal yimatzeh, not being in possession. And the Gemara explains that would be even if it's not, let's say, on your property, if you own chametz somewhere else, if it's not seen to the eye, if it's covered up, right? If it's in a hole in a pit somewhere, or if it's in some storage facility, but if you own it, if it's in your possession on Pesach, you are over on the isur of bal yira'eh u'bal yimatzeh. That's why Chazal explain. That's why there are two different isurim associated, two different prohibitions. Bal yira'eh, bal yimatzeh. They explain all the different parameters and the different details. That even if you don't see it, even if it's not on your property, it's on someone else's property, all different details. But according to Rashi, that's why our Chazal instituted Bedikat Chametz, because you're not allowed to own Chametz on Pesach. Okay? And so therefore, according to Rashi, you have to search your home. You have to search your home and make sure that there is no Chametz in your possession. So two issues. The first is, okay, well, nowadays, right, we're going to sell the Chametz, so, would you still have to do Bedikat Chametz according to Rashi if you sell the Chametz? Okay, so maybe this is talking about Chametz that you're not going to sell, Chametz that, you might not know about, Chametz that might be hidden somewhere. So according to Rashi, you have to search, right, and look for that Chametz so that you're not in violation of owning Chametz or being in possession of Chametz. But the question that Tosfos asks here in source number 2 on Rashi is, what about this verbal declaration that we're going to make? What about this bittul, this nullification? That would seem to take care of the issue of bal yira'eh and bal yimatzeh, right? Because even if you have something that, for whatever reason you forgot about and you didn't include it in your sale, but you're going to make this declaration, and there's a whole discussion as to what suffices to effectuate the bittul. Is it enough to have bittul belev, to just intend in your heart to nullify your chametz? Do you have to verbally declare it? So we say that you have to make a verbal declaration. Exactly how does the bittul work? Are you zapping it out of existence like the afre da'ara, like the dust of the earth? Or, like Tosfos explains, are you making it hefker? You're making it ownerless? We are choshesh for both approaches, and we include that in the language, in the nusach, or in the text of the bittul. But Tosfos asks a question here in source number 2 on Rashi. He says, if the whole reason why Chazal instituted Bedikat Chametz is that one not be in violation of owning Chametz or being in possession of Chametz, so shouldn't the bittul suffice? Right? Shouldn't the bittul suffice? You're no longer owning any Chametz once you've made this verbal declaration and you've nullified it. Okay, so that's the question of Tosfos here. And we'll see how Tosfos explains the purpose behind, the reason behind the institution, the takana of Bedikat Chametz. So Tosfos here in source number 2 writes the following. Perush HaKuntris, Rashi explains, Shelo la'avor alav bival yira'eh u'bal yimatzeh. The reason why Chazal instituted Bedikat Chametz is that a person should not come and violate the isur of owning chametz or being in possession of chametz. The kasha leri says this reason, this explanation of Rashi is difficult for the Ri. Kevan dit sarich bitul, Kidarminan beGemara. The Gemara, it says there in Daf Vav that you need bitul. You're going to nullify the chametz. Habodek tzarich shivatel. The Gemara says you have to, even if you've already searched the home, you still have to say this declaration. You have to nullify your chametz. Umidoraita bivitul ba'alma sagi. And min haTorah, it's enough just to say the bitul, not to be over on the isur of owning chametz. So in other words, if the whole reason behind the prohibition, as Rashi explains, is that you're not be in violation of the isur of owning chametz, so once you've said this bitul, you're no longer in violation of chametz. So why the need for the bedika? So therefore, amai hitzruchu chachamim bedikat klal. Right? The Ri asks, so why, therefore, do you need the bedika? Should it not suffice just to say the bitul according to Rashi? Right? That's the question of Tosfos. And Tosfos explains, V'nira l'Ri, it would appear to the Ri, Afal gav desagi b'vitul ba'alma, hichmiru chachamim livdok chametz liva'aro. Even though, yes, while it's true that it would suffice just to say this bitul, to nullify your chametz, you wouldn't be in possession of it. Nevertheless, the chachamim were stringent. We're going to return to this point a little later on this morning. We find a lot of stringencies, min haTorah and midrabanan, all sorts of chumrot that were accepted over the centuries. Right? So the Ri explains that the chachamim sought to be stringent and institute livdok chametz, to search the home, ulivaro, and to destroy what you find, shelo yavo leochlo, so that you not come to eat the chametz. Shelo yavo leochlo. Okay, that is the reason, according to Tosfot, as to why they instituted Bedikat Chametz. Okay, and Tosfot explains exactly what the concern is. V'chein mashma lekaman. He says that is the pshat in what we have later on in the Gemara on Daf Yud Amud Bet. The Bai Rava Kikar Bishmei Korah V'chulei. The Gemara on Daf Yud discusses a situation where you have some chametz, right? You have a kikar, you have maybe a loaf of bread, or some chametz that's up on some high post, on some korah, on some some place that's out of reach, but there's a question whether you need to remove it or not, okay? And so do you say that since it's out of reach, we're not concerned? Oh, Dilma, or perhaps, Zimnin dinafal, the ate lemichle. Oh, sometimes it could happen that the chametz that's up on such a high post, up on such a high place, that seemingly is out of reach, it could fall and then someone might come to eat it. So here, for the Ri, or for Tosfos, this is a raya, how the Chachamim were stringent when it came to chametz, that a person might come to eat it. Why? As we'll see in a moment, because chametz is permitted the entire year except for 1 week. And human nature is that if I'm used to eating chametz, there's a real concern that I might make a mistake and eat it on Pesach. Okay, why? Because 51 weeks out of the year, chametz is permitted. It's only 1 week out of the year that it's prohibited. Okay, so Tosfos brings this example, and we see there's a real concern. In fact, here, just skipping ahead a little, the Gemara on Daf Vav Amud Bet here in source number 4 says that Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav Habodek tzarich shevatel. After you've done the bedika, you have to make this bittul, and the Gemara explains here, according to Rava, that Gzeva Shemi Matzah Gluska Yafa Vidate Ilavye. Okay, this is very much in line with what Tosfos is explaining here. A person might find a nice muffin, a Gluska Yafa, a nice little pastry, a nice roll, and what? And he might come to eat it or want to eat it on Pesach. So Tosfos explains that the whole reason behind the bedika is, yes, you do make a bittul. Yes, anything that you don't find, that you don't know about, you're not concerned about it because you're zapping it out of existence. You're declaring it hefker, it's ownerless. Okay, you're not going to violate bali re'eu, bali matzeh. But what? but nevertheless, you still have to check the home because you may have missed something. There might be, some shalach manas left, and then you might come to eat it. Okay, and he brings this Gemara to show you that that this is what Chazal were concerned about. They said, if you have something up on a high shelf, on a korah, on a high beam, I guess once upon a time people had beams in their homes to hold up the ceiling, or they had some explain that it could mean some high shelf or something where they would store food in order that rodents and vermin, whatever, would not eat the food if it's up on a high place. Okay, but they were concerned that it might come and fall down and a person might eat it. This is so important for our conversation this morning. He says the reason why, Tosfos explains that the Chachamim were more strict with this Isur. They were more strict here by Chametz, more so than other Isurim, which also have an Isur Hana'ah. One of the, in addition to not being able to eat Chametz, can't eat it, you can't own it, it can't be in your possession, as we've explained. You also cannot derive any benefit from Chametz. So Tosfos says we have other examples of Isurim where there's an Isur Hana'ah, where there's a prohibition on benefiting from those things. And we don't find, right, that you have to search the home for these things and that you have to destroy them. He says, why is Chametz more strict? The reason why Chametz is more strict than those other things, he says, those other things where Chazal did not require you to search and destroy them. Mishum de Chametz mutar kol hashana, as I explained, because Chametz is permitted the entire year. It's permissible the entire year. Vilone sarag bePesach, and it's only asur. It's only prohibited on Pesach. And so a person is not, he's not separated from it, meaning he's used to eating it. It's part of his life. We're creatures of habit. We're always eating chametz every single day, except those of us trying to lose weight. Maybe we're not eating carbs. We're off carbohydrates. But what Tosfos here is explaining is that we have other examples of isurim, of prohibitions, where there's an isur hana'ah, where we don't find you have to go and search and destroy, and we don't make a whole to do about them. So why is chametz any different? Because chametz is permitted the entire year. It's only asur for 1 week, and a person is so used to it. He's not used to abstaining from chametz. It's always with him. Okay, that's what Tosfos is saying here, that we are creatures of habit. Kidamar lekaman, as we have in Daf Yud Aleph, below dame le basar bechalav ve'orla, kilei akerem. He says the isur of chametz is not similar to the prohibition of meat and milk or orla, where you're not allowed to reap the produce of a fruit tree for the first 3 years. Or kilei akerem, klayim, the isur to plant, wheat or other grains together with grapes. So those things also have an isur hana'ah. You cannot derive benefit, but Tosfos says those things are different, right? You don't eat meat and milk the entire year, so we don't require you to search and destroy and make sure there's no cheeseburgers in your home, because we don't eat them the entire year. You're used to that, so it doesn't require a Badika. Okay, and he says she'isurim noheg isur olam. Those things are always prohibited. V'nazir nami isurei, right? Sharei la'achrine. And if you ask, well, what about the nazir? Here, the nazir for a specific time takes a vow of nazirut upon himself. He prohibits himself from wine for a very specific time period. Okay, you could say maybe that's similar to the isur of chametz, which is again prohibited only for a specific time, for a short period. So it also says no, that's different. Why sharei la'achrine? Right? It's different because that already it's permitted to other people. Okay, so since other people have it and he doesn't, so he knows he'll be able to navigate that. So inami shani chametz shechmira bo Torah. We find that chametz is different than all of these other things where there's an isur hana'ah, because the Torah itself is stringent with chametz. Right? Again, you can't be in possession of it. So therefore, hichmiru chachamim livdok ulevaro. Therefore, the chachamim sought to make stringent, an additional stringency, and institute this Bedikat Chametz, searching the home for Chametz. Afilu hechat bitlu mishum dilma ate lemichli. Even though you're going to nullify it, why? Because you may come to eat it. Okay. So number one, Tosfos argues with Rashi. Tosfos says, "What do you mean bal yireh bal matzah? You have to search the home lest you come to find something. Lest something become to be found on you, lest you be found in possession of Chametz. The bittul that you make would suffice to prevent the violation of that isur. You don't own it. You're not in possession of it. If you make this declaration, if you say this bittul. So instead, Tosfos explains, you know why Chazal instituted Bedikat Chametz? Because once the Torah is machmir with this isur, because this isur is unique. It's different than other isurim, even different than other isurei hana'ah. Why? Because the whole year, this stuff, this chametz is permissible, right? I see some of you having breakfast right now as I'm teaching. Baruch Hashem. Feel free. Since chametz is permitted the entire year, 51 weeks out of the year, and only 1 week it's prohibited. So Tosfos explains that Chazal understood the psychology of man, the nature of man, that we are creatures of habit, and therefore instituted that we do a Bedikat Chametz. Right? Why? Because you may come to eat it. That's the concern. Mishum dilma ate lemechli. You may come to eat it. How can you eat chametz on Pesach? Yeah, you can imagine. A person, I don't know, Pesach morning, he was up really late, involved in Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, right, all the way to Zman Kriyat Shema, like Rabbi Akiva and the Chevra in Bnei Brak. So he was up all night learning the Haggadah, telling over Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, and he finally went to sleep, and he woke up, and he's so tired, and he goes downstairs, and he makes himself a cup of coffee, and he's not even thinking, and he wants a little pastry, something to go with his coffee, kafeh u'me'afeh, and he's looking, and he finds something from the Shalach Manos, one of those little muffins that come in those, plastic little baggies. They're hermetically sealed. They can last for months and years. So he is not even thinking about it. And because the whole year, that's what he does every morning, he sits down and with his coffee, he eats chametz. Right? Mishum dilma ate lemechli. Therefore, Tosfos says, Chazal came along and said it's not enough just to make the bittul. Yes, the bittul should suffice in terms of not being over on the isur of being in possession of chametz, but it's not enough just to make the bittul. You also have to do a search and rid the home of any chametz. Why? Because we're so used to eating chametz, you may come to eat something should you find something. Okay, and that's why you have to completely search the home and rid the home of any chametz. Now, the Ran here in source number 3, the Ran offers, it's beyond the scope of our shir this morning, the Ran offers a number of suggestions as to the reason behind Bedikat Chametz and what Badika does and what Bittul does. But take a look where I've underlined. The Ran, according to the Pnei Yehoshua and others, really gives us pshat in Rashi. And in a sense, defends Rashi from the kasha of Tosfos. Remember, Tosfos asks on Rashi, it doesn't make any sense. If the whole reason behind the Badika is so that you're not in violation of owning chametz, so the bittul would suffice. Right? And then Tosfos offers his reason behind Bedikat Chametz. But the Ran explains, why, according to Rashi, there is a concern for bal yireh and bal matzah, even if you've made this bittul. He says, Ela mipnei shebittul zeh talui b'machshavtan shel bnei adam. The declaration that you make, this bittul, this nullification, it's dependent on a person's machshava, a person's mindset, a person's intention. Ve'ein deotehen shavot. Ve'ein deotehen shavot. And people's minds are different, right? Everyone thinks their own thing. Ve'efshar sheyakilu bekach ve'lo yotziuhu miliban legamre. Oh, and you know what? It's possible that when a person makes this nullification, he really doesn't intend completely, wholeheartedly to get rid of that chametz, right? Here you have, imagine a nice, in your home, you have a nice case of fine scotch or something. So let's say he didn't sell it or whatever, he wasn't able to. Okay, so he wants to mevatel it, right? Or maybe he even forgot, okay, whatever, whether he has the scotch there and he's just making a bittul, but maybe he's thinking to himself, I'm making this bittul, but I don't know. I don't really want it to become ownerless, and some person could come into my house and take it. I don't really want it to become ownerless because I really want that chametz. I don't want to give it up. I don't want to declare it null and void or ownerless. So that's the concern. So therefore, the Ran explains, "Ra'u chachamim lahachmir shelo yaspik bittul v'tzrichuhu bedika ubiur shehu maspik gam kein min haTorah." The Ran is the shita that the Badika and Biur should also suffice min haTorah, except that the Chachamim said just Bittul is not enough. You need to have Badika and Biur. And just Badika and Biur is not enough, right? Even min haTorah, though it might be, but you need to do Bittul. You need to have both, the Ran is explaining. I was explaining the reason why we do the Bittul and we do the Badika and the Biur. And he's giving pshat in Rashi, according to Pnei Yoshu and others. In other words, when Rashi said here in source number 1 that the reason why Chazal instituted Badika so that you not come to be in violation of being in possession of Chamez. So the Ran explains, you know why? Because maybe you're not going to make that nullification with a full heart. You're not going to make it wholeheartedly. Maybe you're going to have some other kavanos. You're going to say, maybe I really don't want to give up my chametz. So therefore, even though you make the bittul, we still require the bedika and the biur. Okay? So in other words, the Ran is saying, min haTorah, the bittul might be enough, but come along the chachamim and say, you need bedika and biur. And maybe min haTorah, bedika and biur is enough, but nevertheless, you have to have bittul. You have to have both. That's what the Ran is explaining. Okay, and then again here at the end, where if underlined, he writes, "Umashi tzrichu chachamim bedika b'chametz yoter mi b'shar isurim." Right? Tosfot raised the issue. Wait a minute, but you find that chametz is very unique. You don't find the same type of stringencies by other prohibitions. Chametz, you can't eat it, you can't own it, you can't derive any benefit from it. Okay, you have to destroy it. You have to search and destroy it, okay? You have to nullify it. So he says, so what's unique about chametz? Yoter mi b'shar yisurin, v'lo samchu ala bitul. He says it's not enough, right? Because we've explained that it's this unique type of prohibition. It's not enough just to nullify it. Lo samchu ala bitul. Kfar katavti shasu kein kidei lekayem mitzvah tashbitu shechashishu livnei adam shelo yivatluhu b'machshavtan legamrei. Okay, we have a mitzvah min haTorah of tashbitu. We have a mitzvah of this is in Shmot Yud Bet. Tashbitu seor mi bateichem. You have to destroy or rid the home of all leaven. So what he's saying here, it's not enough just to do that through the bittul, right? Really, min haTorah, it's enough to just do that through the bittul. But no, it's not enough just to nullify it in order to destroy it. You have to also do Badika and Biur. You have to search and destroy. Why? Because maybe just nullifying it, a person's not going to have the right kavanot, as the Ran explained. Maybe he's going to, he won't be full. He's not wholehearted. He's not completely sincere. Not completely sincere when he makes that declaration, and therefore you need Badika and Biur as well. Okay, so the Ran really reconciles this machlokes between Rashi and Tosfos. Okay, so as we saw, different reasons why Chazal required us to do Bedikat Chametz. Right, you need bittul is not enough, right? Because either a person might not truly nullify it or declare it ownerless, sincerely, wholeheartedly, completely, or right, it's not enough because, as Tosfos explained, if you don't search the home and destroy, if you don't search and destroy, you might come to find something. Not enough just to rely on the bittul. You might come to find something, and then you might accidentally come to eat it because we are creatures of habit. Interestingly, how both, the way we've explained the sheet of Rashi, according to the Ran, and the sheet of Tosfos, both explanations behind the mitzvah Bedikat Chametz are psychological in nature, right? Either we're concerned that a person might not be wholehearted in his nullification, or we're concerned that a person is, a creature of habit. We understand human nature, and he might come Pesach morning, and he's tired, and he's not thinking, and if he didn't rid the house and search the house and make sure everything is gone, he might find that muffin, according to Tosfos, and he might come to eat it. So both shitos, both positions of Rashi and Tosfos are, rooted in an understanding of human nature and human psychology. Okay, but what about this custom of putting out the 10 pieces of bread? So now we understand why Chazal required us to make Bedikat Chametz, and why just nullifying the Chametz doesn't suffice. But why spread out 10 pieces of bread? As I said, it's dangerous, right? You spent days and weeks cleaning the home, and now you're going to put out Chametz, right? It's crazy. And in addition, like, you can ask, what, it's some sort of game, some sort of scavenger hunt or treasure hunt, and it would seem also to undermine the whole purpose of this rabbinic institution, this mitzvah of Bedikat Chametz. It's supposed to really be a sincere search. So this would seem to undermine it. So I put here in source number 5 a very nice tshuva from Rav Ovadia Yosef that appears in the 5th volume of Yechavedat. Okay, here it's in source number 5. And he's asked about this minhag to spread out 10 pieces of bread during Bedikat Chametz. And he's asked, Ha'im yesh yesod l'minhag zeh al pi ha'halacha? Is there a source? Is there a foundation to this custom in halacha? And he writes the following, tshuva. He cites a tshuva of the Ravid first. He says, Haravid be'shelut tshuvot tamim de'im. It appears a few places in the Ravid. He says, Katav, Eile hanotnim chametz, bechorim u'bzdakim, b'shat b'dikat chametz. Those who place chametz in the cracks and the crevices at the time of Bedikat Chametz, or right before Bedikat Chametz, he says, Ma'aseh nashim hu ve'en lo shoresh. And he also cites that it's found in the Tshuvot of the Ravid, and in Peidal. He says, according to the Ravid, it's a Ma'aseh nashim, and it has no root, it has no source. There's no source for it. Okay, we'll see in a moment why the minhag developed, and why there is maybe a source, and why there were those who were concerned about something, and there is maybe a reason behind it. There's a rationale behind it. But he calls it a Ma'aseh nashim without getting too much into to what that means, right? Chaz v'shalom, it's not, we don't mean anything derogatory. Rav Ovadia Yosef, by the way, doesn't call it a Ma'aseh nashim. It's the Ravid, the Ravid who calls it a Ma'aseh nashim. But at the time, of course, women, unfortunately, were not educated. Nashim were not educated. So that expression, Ma'aseh nashim, it refers to the practice of uneducated people. Okay, people that, just don't know the halacha, and therefore are spreading out chametz at the time of Bedikat Chametz. But as we'll see in a moment, there actually was a good reason for it, or at least a good explanation. You can argue against it, but those who had this custom did have a good reason behind it. Did have there was a tam for this minhag, or a yisod for this minhag. And so he quotes Orchot Chaim in Hilchot Chametz Matzah. He says, Orchot Chaim hosif she'af al pi shenahagu kein biktzat mekomot. Even though this is done in a number of places, there are communities that observe this custom. Mipnei shechasheshu pen lo yimatzeh chametz v'tiyeh birkato levatala. Oh, mikol makom anu lo chasheshin, anu lo chashashnu lazeh, he writes. So the Orchot Chaim mentions the minhag of spreading out pieces of bread before Bedikat Chametz, and he says, even though some have the custom, we don't observe this custom, we're not concerned, but he does provide a reason for it. He says, remember, we're making a bracha during Bedikat Chametz, or before Bedikat Chametz, right? We make the bracha of Al Biur Chametz. There's a whole discussion as to, the nusach or the matbeah of the bracha. Why is it such Al Biur? But the bracha is made on searching the home and destroying what you find. So there was a concern. Wait a minute. What if I don't find anything? Right? What if I search and I have nothing to destroy. Maybe making the bracha of al biur chametz is a bracha levatala. It's a violation of lo tisa, of taking Hashem's name in vain, a bracha levatala, an unnecessary bracha. Okay, bracha she'ein tzricha, or worse, the bracha levatala, if I don't find anything, right? So that was the concern. People would spread out bread, because if you're going to make a bracha, I better find something. Okay, otherwise maybe it's a bracha levatala. He says, no, we're not concerned about that. Why? Lefi shedatenu kishemevarchin al biur chametz shenivaer hakol im nimtze or im nimtza. He says, what is the bracha al biur chametz? Biur chametz is that you're making a bracha on the Badika, on the search, and on destroying chametz should you find chametz. If there is chametz, right? But the Orchot Chaim says there's no concern of bracha levatala should you not find chametz. Okay, but you see that those who had this custom had a reason behind it. They were concerned of a bracha levatala. What if I don't find anything? Maybe I made a bracha. It's a bracha levatala, right? It's like that famous story about the brisker, who it's maybe the story's a little bit in poor taste. You'll excuse me, but it illustrates the point. I'm not going to tell it overright. I have enough. I have a hard enough time remembering a Tosfos, Kal v'chomer, remembering jokes. But the story goes that this brisker is about to be killed by a terrorist, and he makes a bracha before fulfilling the mitzvah of dying al kiddush Hashem. And at the very last moment, right before the terrorist is about to kill him, all of a sudden, an Israeli soldier shoots and kills the terrorist. So this brisker goes up to the soldier. No! Okay, well, you're all on mute, so I can't hear the outbreak of laughter. But he's signaling him to, it's again, not in the best of taste, but signaling him to kill him. Otherwise, it's a bracha levatala. No. Yeah. Anyway, it's like when you're, yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's the joke. So Ravadi continues and cites Rabbeinu Manoach. Gam Rabbeinu Manoach hivi divrei harayvid hanal, that it's a bad minhag. Right? The Ravid believed there was a minhag shtut or minhag ta'ut, a mistaken minhag. We've spoken about minhagim in the past in these shiurim that would need to be uprooted. V'hiskimimo, and Rabbeinu Manoach agreed with the Ravid. Sharei einanu mevarchin al mitziat chametz. We're not making the bracha on finding the chametz. We make the bracha on searching the chametz and destroying the chametz should you find chametz. Right? So there's not a concern of a bracha levatala. Ach b'shibbolei aleket katav matzati b'tshuvot hageonim. Shibbolei Leket writes, I found in the tshuvot of the Geonim, kishemevarech al biur eino choshesh im eino motzeh chametz. Shemikol makom nechshav ki biur ma shemechazer acharav levaro. What's this bracha of biur chametz? It's not about burning chametz. It's about burning what you find, about ma shemechazer acharav levaro. It's really on the process of searching in order to destroy. Ma shemechazer acharav levaro, to destroy should you find it, but not that you have to destroy something, not that you have to find something. Okay. V'chayav levarech, and you're obligated to bless, meaning obligated to bless whether you're going to find something or whether you're not going to find something. In our homes nowadays, as I said, we spent days and weeks already cleaning the home. Hopefully we're not going to find anything. I don't know. With my 6 kids, you always find something. But hopefully you're not going to find anything. Should you not make a bracha? What if a person, for whatever reason, doesn't have bread? Do you have to go out to the store and buy bread in order to spread out 10 pieces of bread to fulfill this minhag? That would be crazy, right? That would be crazy to go out and buy. Or I've seen in some places, I think I might have seen it in Chutz La'aretz. I don't know if it's made its way here to Eretz Yisrael, but I've seen these kind of pre-packaged Bedikat Chametz kits, which include, the feather, the wooden spoon, of course, which kids usually get in school, or they somehow mail for fundraisers. In the old country, in the United States, used to get in the mail like a feather and a spoon and a paper bag from different organizations looking to raise money. But I've seen prepackaged 10 little pieces of bread. Okay, do you have to go and buy that? in advance? Or do you say, no, the bracha is made on the process of searching in order to destroy, al biur chametz, on the destruction of chametz, on ridding the home of chametz, but it's on the process, and it doesn't matter whether or not I find chametz, or whether or not I have chametz to destroy, but the bracha is made on the process of the search and destroy. Okay? And that's what we're saying here. Avalachi Rabbi Binyamin katav she'eno sover kain. No. Shekivan she'abracha ala bedika ve'ikar bedika hi habiur al ma yivarech velo eino mevarer. But there was a dissenting view that felt, no, maybe there is a concern. Maybe the bracha is on the biur, the ikar. Why is it al biur chametz? Because the ikar is the biur. And so maybe there is a concern. Maybe those who had this custom of spreading out chametz, should they not find anything during the Badika and not have anything to destroy, maybe there is some validity to such a practice. Okay? Uveshelu tshuvot maharivayel katav shatam shenagu kain kidei she'al yedei kach yiskor levatel chametz lemachar b'shat habiur. Another reason. Maybe you spread it out so that you have something the next day, right, at the time of burning. Now, the truth is, what if you don't? What if you don't have something, right? So obviously you don't burn chametz that you don't have, right? It's not like some people, they throw in, plastic and furniture and plastic bags. There's no mitzvah to burn plastic, okay? Only chametz. You don't have to burn the plastic bag with it. And this year, what are we going to do? So this year, we'll burn the chametz on Friday morning. Why? So that we'll remember what to do next year. But really, the final nullification we will make on Shabbat morning, after we have that Suda, or maybe if you want to have two Suda, if you want to have Shalosh Shudas also with bread, or some will use egg matzah, but if you use bread, so you can take the crumbs and, like the Mishnah says, scatter them into the wind or toss them to the sea, burial at sea, which, for our purposes this year would be flushing them down the toilet. So you don't have to burn what you don't have. But the Marivayel says, the reason behind this minhag is so that should you not find anything, you'll still have something to burn, and you'll remember to make the bittul. The key is the bittul. And the concern from the Marivayel is, well, what if you don't have anything to burn, right? So then maybe you're not going to do what? You're not going to make the bittul. That's the concern. Okay, so he explains the reason that some had this custom to put out 10 pieces, it's not because of bracha levatala, it's so that it ensures that they'll remember the next morning to say the bitul chametz, to nullify the chametz. Because if they don't have anything to burn, maybe they're not going to nullify their chametz. Okay. Now, the Ramah on the Shulchan Aruch brings down this minhag to spread out pieces of chametz. He doesn't specify dafka 10, that is al pi Kabbalah, according to Jewish mysticism. But the Ramah says, "V'noagin laniach ptitei chametz b'makom she yimatzam bodek." Yeah, the minhag is to place pieces of bread. The Ramah felt this was a proper minhag. The Ramah was not against this minhag. He felt it was a proper minhag to place out pieces of bread prior to the Bedikat Chametz in a place where they'll be found. In order that the one searching finds them. Yeah, in order that his bracha not be levatala. So the Ramah agreed with that approach. But he admits that, nevertheless, if you don't put out pieces of bread, you can still make a bracha, right? Because the bracha, again, as we've explained, is on the search and on destroying what you may find. Not that you have to find something. Okay, the bracha is made on the search and on destroying al biur chametz, should you find chametz. So he says it's not le'ikuva. Okay, if you don't put out the pieces of bread, that's okay too. You can still make a bracha. Shedat kol adam b'shat habracha levaer im nimtza. As we've explained, because one's intent is, at the time when making the bracha, is that he's going to destroy what he finds, should he find something. V'agon Yavetz, b'sefer mor uktzia katav, and the Yavetz, Rabbi Yaakov Emden, writes in his mor uktzia, which is his commentary to the Tur. He writes the following: Shagon Mar Aviv HaChacham Tzvi, Tzvi Ashkenazi, that was the the father of the Yavetz of Rav Yaakov Emden. He's Rav Yaakov Emden ben Tzvi. Okay, so he writes, my father, the Chacham Tzvi, he said the following: Hayalo egg al haminichim ptitim kidei shei matzah habodek. He would laugh. He would mock those who put out pieces of bread in order that they find them. Okay, afal pi she habe'er hetev katav kain b'shem ha'ari. Even though the Be'er Hetev brings this custom down in the name of the Arizal, right? Yitzchak Luria, great Kabbalist, Yitzchak Luria Ashkenazi, Huzal Hayabaki Bechol Kitvei Ha'ari. Yaakov Emden says, my father was an expert in all of the Lurianic Kabbalah, in all of the writings of the Ari. Ushma mina shesover shelo amar kein ha'ari me'olam, and he held that he believed that the Ari did not ever record such a minhag, did not ever make such a statement that one should put out pieces of bread or 10 pieces of bread. Now the Rav Ovadia Yosef, with his encyclopedic mind and access to so many svarim. So Rav Ovadia, he says, no, but the truth is, despite what Rav Yaakov Emden reports, it's possible that his father, who was indeed an expert in Lurianic Kabbalah and the Kitvei Ari, it's possible that, okay, he didn't have access to every volume of the writing of Rav Chaim Vital. And in Sefer Pri Eitz Chaim, and he gives it to you here, Rav Ovadia says, the Shar Chaf Aleph, etc. The minhag is recorded b'Shem Ha'ari. We do have such a custom. V'chein katab b'Sefer Shnei Luchot Abrit, and the Shlah, right, also a great Kabbalist. V'chein katav Hagon Rabbi Chaim Falaji b'Sefer Chaim LaRosh, another great Kabbalist. Shekin ra'ui la'asot al pi hasod. There is this idea that putting out the pieces of bread, dafka 10 pieces of bread, it corresponds to the sfirot, the Kabbalistic emanations, okay, all sorts of different Kabbalistic meaning that is involved here. This practice of putting out the 10 pieces of bread is imbued with all sorts of Kabbalistic meaning. Okay, and then Rav Ovadia adds something very interesting. He quotes a great German Talmid Chacham by the name of Rabbi Moshe Kalfon. And he says the following: Ulu mato ra'iti lagon Rabbi Kalfon Moshe Kohen. He was a Kohen, like a lot of people in Jerba. Most of the island are Kohanim. They're Kohanim Yuchasim. Mentioned that last week. We were talking about Kohanim Yuchasim. So he writes the following in his Sefer Brit Kehuna. He says, "Shekatav she'adarab," just the opposite. Al yidei hanachat haptitim kimat batla ikar takanat habdika. He says, through this practice of spreading out 10 pieces of bread, it's kimat that we've gotten rid of the whole essence, the whole reason behind searching the home. Ki ha'amon einam mechapsim chametz, rak noagim ki mitzvat anashim ilumada, mabitim ana va'ana limtso et aptitim bilvad. They're not actually searching for chametz. They're not really searching the home for chametz. They're only looking for those 10 pieces of bread and those 10 pieces of bread alone. V'choshvim shezehu ikar mitzvah Badika, and they think that is the essence of this mitzvah. V'lachen yesh lahorot l'shoalim shelo yanichu aptitim. V'kol shekain she'en lidrosh berabim laniach ptitim. Wow, he says, therefore, rabbis, listen up. You have to teach the masses, those who ask, not to put out bread. And all the more so, don't tell people in publicly. Don't darshan berabim. Don't teach people to put out pieces of bread, because he says it undermines the whole purpose of this mitzvah. As we saw, the mitzvah is to search the home, either to ensure that if your nullification wasn't wholehearted, you'll still be chametz free. You won't be over on bal yoreh bal matzah. Or as we saw according to Tosfos, that you want to make sure that you don't accidentally find something and accidentally eat something. And that's why you have to do a real search of the home and rid the home of everything, every last thing, because it's not enough just to nullify the chametz. Chametz is permissible the rest of the year. It's only prohibited 1 week out of the year. So you really got to make sure you rid the home of it, lest you might come to eat it. So Rabbi Moshe Kalfon here says that putting out 10 pieces of bread, that minhag would seem to undermine the whole purpose of the mitzvah, because people are searching just for those 10 pieces of bread. Okay? Very interesting. And as I said, if a person doesn't have those 10 pieces of bread, right, you've already gotten rid of all your chametz. What, you're going to go to the store and buy them? Wouldn't make any sense. Except that what? Okay, minhag avotenu biyadenu. This is a minhag. He's hiru b'minhag avotechem biyadechem. What are you going to do about it? right? Al titosh torati mecha. We've spoken in the past about minhagim and how we treat them with a certain reverence and deference. And if it's your minhag, it's your minhag. If it were up to me, I would say in my home, let's get rid of this custom of putting out 10 pieces of bread completely. Okay, I'll pick Kabbalah, Peseder, Hanistarot Lashem Elokeinu, Vaniglot Lanu Levanenu. Except that for my wife and my kids, this is Yahareg Ve'al Yavor. Okay, but I do make sure that we don't only search for those 10 pieces of bread, and this is important. For those of you who have the minute to put out 10 pieces of bread, it's important that you still make a sincere search. Okay, that in addition to those 10 pieces of bread, you also really look around the home. Now, Rav Ovadia, he continues and says, but what if you lose one of them? Maybe it's kind of dangerous. So he offers an interesting suggestion. He says, they don't have to, there's no shear. They don't have to be, they don't have to be a kazayit, each of them. And maybe it's enough even if all together they're a kazayit. But he said, no, maybe just the opposite. Maybe the best thing is to use tiny little pieces. I would say, wrap them carefully as well, maybe in some paper or something. But he says, make each piece less than a kazayit. Why? Kedei she'im lo yimatzam. If you don't find them, if one gets lost, right? She'im lo yimatzam abodek lo yitzarech litroach harbe lachzor acharei. You don't have to turn the whole house upside down. You don't have to go crazy trying to find a piece if you've lost it. If it's pachot mikeshi, or if it's less than a kazayit, v'yismach al bitul Chamez shemevatel achar Badika. It would be enough just to rely on the nullification that you're going to make to take care of that tiny little crumb. Okay, so that's what he says. So he raises the issues that we've explained. He defends the practice, and then he says that ideally you should try to make them very small. He says, it's something that has a source. There is a rhyme and reason to it. And certainly according to Jewish mysticism, you should put out the 10 pieces. You don't have to go crazy placing them in 10 different places all around the house so that you won't find them. Each piece should be less than a kazayit. Right? And wrap them in paper so that they don't make a big mess. The house is already clean. He says, if you lose one or two, okay, it's okay. If they're so small, so then we're not concerned. You can rely on the bitul that you're going to make. Okay, but as I said, if it were up to me, in my home, I would do away with this minhag, except this is the minhag in my parents' home, and my wife, it was a minhag in her parents' home, and okay, this is minhag Yisrael, the Ramah brings it down, the Bnei Yisrael, or at least Bnei Ashkenaz, we are Yotzim Biyad Ramah, okay, right, that's understood to mean that we follow the Ramah, but in any case, that is the tshuva of Rav Ovadia. This tshuva, by the way, is near and dear to my heart, because I actually am in possession of the original tshuva written B'Ktav Yad Kodsho. I trust you can all see it here on the screen. It's written on 3 little pieces of stationery, the stationery of the office of the chief rabbinate. Okay, this is a tshuva that's published in Yechavedat Chelek Hey, the 5th volume of Yechavedat, but I own the original tshuva written in his holy hand, B'Ktav Yad Kodsho. You could see, by the way, from just the way he writes, it's so beautifully, his handwriting, his script, and this is on online paper, 3 pieces of online paper. You see how his brain worked, how he was so organized. You see that from his tshuvot, how his thoughts were so organized, but even his handwriting, you could see it in his handwriting. I am also in possession of tshuvot and writings of Rav Kook, also on the stationery of the chief rabbinate, and I have the 2 hanging side by side, and you see how Rav Ovadia's handwriting is so organized and neat and reflects, his way of thinking, how he was so organized and misudar, whereas Rav Kook, his handwriting is very flowery and it flows. You can look at Beit Rav Kook at his writing desk. There's all sorts of scratches on his writing desk because they say that the paper would finish, but the thoughts would continue to flow. So he had these kind of free-flowing thoughts, and you see that expressed in his handwriting. So I like the juxtaposition of the two right next to each other. Rav Kook, he had the pen of a poet and the soul of a mystic, and it was just this Mayana mitgaber, this brook, this wellspring that would just overflow. But in any case, so this tshuva is near and dear to my heart. So how do we make sense of Bedikat Chametz, and what should our attitude to Bedikat Chametz really be? So, as I explained, according to Rashi, as explained by the Ran, the reason for Bedikat Chametz is it might not be enough to just nullify your Chametz, right? It might not be enough. You want to ensure that it's wholehearted, that nullification is wholehearted. And so therefore we do Badika and Bi'ur as well, to take care of anything that he may not have covered with his nullification. So speak according to Tosfos, it's because we're creatures of habit, right? And we are concerned, maybe a person is going to forget that it's Pesach, and this is a very unique Isur, and he might come to eat Chametz on Pesach. And while the custom is that many of us have to put out these 10 pieces of bread, Ravadia says you should make sure there's small pieces of bread. Some poskim say you should maybe write a list of where they were placed so that you don't forget one. Okay, but even if you do, and if it's so small, okay, you can rely on the bittul, says Ravadia. But how do you make sure that the Badika is sincere, right? So if you're doing it for 5 minutes and you're only searching for those 10 pieces of bread, yeah, like we saw, like Ravadia writes, he's citing Rabbi Moshe Kalfon, this great German Chacham, that, yeah, then it would seem to undermine the whole purpose of the mitzvah if it's not a sincere search, if you're searching only for those 10 pieces of bread. However, if you, in addition to searching for those 10 pieces of bread, if you really, give the house what I would call a once over, then it is sincere. Because as we said at the beginning, you could say, Rabbi, what's the point of it? I know that the house is clean, right? We've spent days and weeks cleaning the house. I've already been over the entire house. So I think you can still make the Badika into a sincere experience and a real Badika in line with the intent of Chazal. How? If you view it as a once over. Okay, before Corona, some of us used to travel, and I know myself, this is something that my father always taught me, that when you check out of a hotel, right, what do? You pack up your bags, you go through the closets, maybe you hung something up, maybe you put something in a drawer, and you pack up your bags, and then your bags are already right by the door, waiting for the bellhop to come and take them down to the lobby, to your car. Your bags are already packed. You've already been through the bedroom. You've already looked in the bathroom. You make sure your toothbrush is not there. But once everything's packed up, you give the room a once over, right? Give it a once over. One last check. And that's a sincere Badika. That's a sincere check, right? You give it one last over, but you want to make sure you didn't leave anything behind, even though you know you didn't leave anything behind. You know in your heart of hearts that you spent time searching the room and packing up your bags. So you're not going to find anything, hopefully, but you still give it that one last once over, that one last Badika, right? And that's very sincere, that's real. And that's Bedikat Chametz. And that's how I think Bedikat Chametz can be both sincere and meaningful, because we're looking for what's there or what's not there, but we're still looking. We're really looking, like when you leave a hotel room, you give it that one last check, that one last sweep. That's the word I was looking for. One last sweep of the room. And it's very real, because even though you've already packed up your toothbrush, you want to make sure maybe you didn't leave something in the bathroom or leave something under the bed, right? You throw over the comforters, the blanket. So Bedikat Chametz, even though the home's already clean and ready for Pesach, Bedikat Chametz is like that one last sweep of the hotel room. Okay. In addition, as we know, Chametz represents the Sahara, represents ego, right? It's that inflated sense of self. Chametz is full of hot air. after it goes through the fermentation process. If you look at a good piece of bread, you see the little air pockets inside, right? Like my wife's challah, dough rises. And that's really the root of our problems that we're trying to uproot. We're seeking and destroying. That's what we also do when we do a Bedikat Chametz. Besides being the sincere search of the home, we're also turning inwards and doing a little bit of a soul searching, a cheshbon hanefesh. The Chametz, which represents ego and an inflated sense of self, and the Sahara, we want to get rid of that. And that requires a number of what? A number of searches. And even though you think, yeah, you're good, no, you still have to look under every little thing, just like Bedikat Chametz. Look in the chorim, zdakim, the holes, the cracks, the crevices. The candle is compared to like the neshama, right? We're looking, Hashem examines us with the candle. The Chachamim bring psukim, which describe how the process of Bedikat Chametz is a spiritual soul searching as well. It's a time to introspect and to reflect and to get rid of that chametz of our souls. Right? If you think about it, what's the difference between chametz and matzah? In fact, in order to be kosher, matzah, to be used to fulfill the mitzvah, it has to be made from one of the grains, one of the 5 grains, which can become chametz. So it's, in a sense, matzah is the same ingredients as chametz, which is incredible. The same thing that's prohibited, right, on Pesach, we have this special mitzvah to eat on Pesach. So what's the difference between matzah and chametz? In one word, time. That's the difference. And chametz perhaps represents, letting things ferment, letting things get away from us, not living up to our potential. Maybe it represents missed opportunity. In fact, in modern Hebrew, the word for missed opportunity is hachmatzah, right? Hachmatzah comes from the word chametz. That's what chametz is. It's missed opportunity. And that's really what the Yetzer Hara is. What's this comparison between chametz and the Yetzer Hara, right? The idea is that chametz is missed opportunity. It's not living up to our true potential as individuals and as a nation, right? Our individual potential and our national potential. We read Shir HaShirim over Pesach. So a lot of reasons behind that. Shir HaShirim is the greatest love story, describes love between Hashem and the Jewish people, describes all of Jewish history and destiny. But it's also a tragic story. It's a story of unrequited love because the 2 lovers never meet. And for Rav Soloveitchik, it's a story of missed opportunities. That's what he describes in his famous essay, Kol Dodi Dofek. And there, he actually describes missed opportunity. He uses this expression, hachmatzat hasha'a, again, chametz, missing the appointed time, missing the mark, not living up to an opportunity. Here, Hashem is knocking on our door. Soloveitchik writes, Hashem's knocking on the door of history and telling us to listen to the knocks. Look what's happening in the world. Listen to all those knocks, those sheish tefikot with the founding of the state of Israel, those miracles. But in a very simple sense, just the pshat of the story, it's a story of missed opportunity, right? The 2 lovers, they're madly in love with one another. And finally, in the sort of the climax of the story, at the height of the story, in the 5th chapter, it's described how he comes to her garden, right? The dode comes to his lover's garden, and he knocks on the door, and he says, "Pitchili achoti rayati yonati tamati," right? Open up for me, my beloved, etc. All this flowery language, and what does she answer? She says, "Pashatati et kutonti, echecha al bashena el bashena." I've already taken off my clothes. How can I get dressed now? In other words, I'm in my pajamas. I'm in for the night. Rachatzti et raglai, echecha atanfeim. I've washed my feet already. How am I going to soil them walking to the door? And it's so tragic. He puts his hand through the keyhole, and she's covered in all sorts of myrrh and oils, and her hand slips off the door. It's so tragic. It's so dramatic. They just miss each other by the time she gets to the door, and by the time she opens the door, Vidodi chamak avar. My lover turned and left. He was gone. It's too late. It's this tragic story of missing opportunity. Here, opportunity is knocking on the door, and you miss the opportunity. That's the story of Shir HaShirim, and I think that's maybe why chametz, or how chametz represents something so tragic, and Chametz is, it's the Sahara, it's all these evil traits, it's these bad midos. Yeah, that's what the Bali Musar and the Bali Machshava explain. And so we have to get rid of those negative traits. We got to uproot them. It's the ego. It's that inflated sense of self. It's full of hot air. It's risen dough. But it's more than that, because really, what separates Chametz from Matzah? It's only time. Right? Matzah, it's the same ingredients. But what? Chametz, you let it get out of your control. You let it rise. You missed that opportunity. You didn't live up to your true potential. As I said, it's true for us as individuals and for us as a nation. And so, Mirz Hashem, this year we'll do a good Bedikat Chametz, a real and sincere Bedikat Chametz, both of our homes and of our souls. Okay, we'll do a real searching of the home and a real soul searching. And Mirz Hashem, we should live up to our true potential and not let things get out of our control, get out of hand, not miss that opportunity, not let time, get away from us, which is what the Chametz represents. And we should, Mirz Hashem, live up to our true potential, our unique potential as individuals and our potential as a nation. Okay, I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. We don't have much time for questions. Maybe about like 2 minutes.
Okay, so Mirz Hashem, we will see each other Wednesday morning.
Okay.
Next Wednesday, we will be having shiur.
Okay. Wow, Kol HaKavod.
We will be having shiur next Wednesday. I hope to see you all.
Kol HaKavod. I know it's a tough week.
Okay, be well. Take care.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Always nice to see you.
Yishar koach.
Wait.
Koach.
Take care.